little things. Hello, everybody. I don't know if we have anybody in the chat, but if we do, welcome. It is a slightly drizzly Sunday morning here in New Zealand, but it's still Saturday evening where our lovely guest Chaz, wrong way, there we go. Our lovely guest Chaz is sitting. How are you, Chaz? How have you been? Because we haven't had you on the channel, I think since you went through Farseer.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm doing fabulous, Terry. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have this chat with you. I've been every chance I've gotten as I've completed a book or a series, I'm like, oh man, I have to talk to Derry about this.
Well, that is my goal, is to attach myself to it so I get to hear what people think and how they're going. Hi, Donald. Lovely to see you. And we've got Peter in the chat as well. Peter, fabulous man, of wonderful taste. Fabulous. Every time I've encountered Peter in the last little while, it's been absolutely doubling down on the fact that this person likes all of the same things as I do.
Yeah.
Clearly a man of taste.
Wow. Right.
So obviously I've got the banner going at the bottom so that there's no confusion, because there has been in the past, because this is my channel and I do full spoilers. But obviously you've only read to the end of Tawny Man, so we have to put a limit on where the spoilers can go to.
Right.
So we're going to do full spoilers for everything up to the end of Tawny Man. And you've been reading, it's taken you a couple of years to get to the end of Tawny Man. You've gone at a really great pace as far as I'm concerned. The perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
Read a trilogy, take a break. Read a trilogy, take a break. And now you've come through to Tawny Man, which for a lot of readers is the absolute pinnacle of the series, because it brings that first arc to just such a satisfying close.
Yes.
And
heart-wrenching.
Very heart-wrenching. And I've been known to say it, I'll say it again. People who have found this series since more has been written in it have a very different experience than I did when Fool's Fate was the last published book. You didn't know at that point that who was going to survive.
Right.
So when you got to the pinnacle of the story and things are at the absolute most heightened emotional peak, you don't know who's going to make it through. Right. So that's a very different experience to readers coming in now, knowing that there's still another 7 books to go and that 3 of them are called Fits in the Fool.
Yeah.
So of course they're all going to make it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a different experience. Having said that, I think back when you read Farseer and how connected I know you felt to a lot of the characters, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you about Live Ships, but the culmination of that story, how was that for you coming back to Fitz and knowing what you learnt with Live Ships?
Oh wow, it was absolutely amazing to come back and experience them, especially having gotten to the end of Assassin's Quest and not really totally feeling it. There were definitely times in Assassin's Quest where I was I don't want to say I was bored with Fitz, but I feel like
he can be a little annoying. You were allowed to say you were over him.
I definitely feel like Fitz is enhanced by the people around him.
Yes.
And I think that's true of all of us, really. You know, we need connection with other people. And when he's just going by himself, it's like, okay, where are we going with this, Fitz? But seeing him reconnecting with the Fool and all the ups and downs of their relationship in Tawny Man, because there were some definite ups and downs. I was just there for it the entire time. I just absolutely loved it. And you know, when we got to the end, and I thought it was almost impossible for the Fool to come back at the end of the trilogy. I'm like, okay, how is this going to happen? Because obviously there's another trilogy with the Fool. unless it's a flashback or something, but it wasn't. Yeah, I was just, I feel like the the relationship between Fitz and the Fool, because of him bringing the Fool back to life, was uh, went uh, went to new depths of feeling and emotion. And I don't know if Fitz is ever going to um, have all the walls down like the Fool does, because the Fool clearly told him from the beginning, I put no limits on my love for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Fitz will ever get there, but I think he definitely has a much, much deeper connection with the Fool than he did before. And
Yeah.
they had some rocky times, but I think it just made their relationship stronger. And I loved it so much. It was
Yeah.
great. Yeah. And there were a lot of other great characters in the series too, that just enhanced the whole the whole world, and the character stories and everything. Peter
Hmm.
brought one up earlier, about
Yeah.
Thick. I absolutely love Thick. At the beginning, I wasn't sure quite what I was going to think of Thick,
No,
but
because it is a very kind of a grey and nuanced thing. You're like, which way is this going to go?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I really grew to love. I mean, I didn't dislike him,
No.
but I really grew to like him even more by the end of the series. And just all the relationships, and
Oh yeah, and
recon
some of the new characters really
yes,
did bring some life into the story.
yeah,
Even as young as she was, I really like the character of Eliana. The,
yes,
the
me
the
too.
drive in her was really impressive, because you
Yeah,
you got the sense that this little girl was desperate for something,
yeah,
and I really enjoyed I enjoyed waiting to find
yeah,
out what was going on.
hmm,
And sometimes that can be irritating. Like,
yes,
oh yeah, come on, just why is this I was happy to wait for that reveal, um, because of course you get the lovely little sort of drips and drabs of hints. And one of the covers for Golden Fall is a wonderful image of tattoos on the back of
I've
what you
seen
come to
that one.
know
Yeah,
is Fall, but without context. It's just the back of a person with tattoos all up down their back, and that becomes quite a strong part of the story.
hmm,
And yet when you first see them, you have no context for it at all,
right,
but it's important.
hmm.
You're like, oh, I mean, how did you, during your engagement with that particular thread to the story with Piotr and Aliania and the Out Islanders, what were your thoughts sort of going through with that? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really enjoyed the entire story arc for that. I think at the very beginning, when they first came to the Six Duchies to visit the kingdom and to make some betrothal agreements and different things like that, I did not trust Eliania. I just felt like there was something there that she wasn't saying, and I was right, but
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily her fault either.
No.
And I grew to understand that later, because there was uh, the the white woman, or
Yes. Yep.
the
You had
pale
Anya,
woman.
the handmaiden. Yeah.
There was the handmaiden, and then the other white prophet, or
Yeah.
styled herself to be the white prophet. And so there was a lot going on there behind the scenes. And um, I I didn't trust her from the beginning, but I felt really bad for that after I found out why
Yeah.
she was being so secretive, and um, you know, uh, seductive even, and just, you know, not
being so driven.
being so driven. Yeah.
I mean, I very much enjoyed that plot line, again, because you understand very early that there's something happening here that we just don't know yet.
Yeah.
And that unraveling of that mystery I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I do find with Tawny Man, and it's possibly the only series within Realm of the Elderlings that does it, is that book one almost sits as a standalone with this, we have to go and find Dutiful. And then books 2 and 3 are a separate story. Now we're going to go and we've got a different thing. We've got to find out what's happening, very political. And that first book with Dutiful, where we're on this quest to find Dutiful, after we get that wonderful opening in the cabin where we're just reconnecting with the world, there was some really clever little tie-ins to live ships while we were chasing Dutiful. And that Fitz and Dutiful escape through pillars and they end up on Others Beach.
Yeah.
Now, when you were reading that, did you immediately realize that's where you were, or did it take you a little bit to put that together?
I had an inkling, but I had to read more before I realized that it was actually the Others Beach. And then to find out that that's where the feathers came from.
Yeah.
I'm just, boy, there's a lot of tie-ins there to Live Ship for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, without having, because I hate to admit it, but there are readers out there that don't read Live Ships before going to Tawny Man.
Yes.
It hurts my heart. It does. But it happens. The tie-ins are just sprinkled throughout Tawny Man, but that's a really important one because you're getting Wizardwood and you're getting the connection, and that Wizardwood is connected to the Memory Stone. They both do a very similar thing. They both absorb memory. So when he finds these feathers on the beach, you're immediately thinking, oh, I remember a crown. There was a crown.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I know what those are for.
Yeah.
And then Dutiful finds this little necklace of a girl. And we haven't met Eliania at that point.
Right.
Did it occur to you when we bumped into Eliania that was who that represented at all? Or I'm saying this like you do know. I'm assuming that that's something you picked up. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I actually didn't at first until he started taking a closer look at the statue, and then I made the connection. And I thought that was really interesting because it's almost like the Others Beach it's almost like it's set outside of time in a way, because you wonder, okay, how would they know who this Eliana is to make a likeness of her when, she lives another continent away, and maybe at the time that was made, she wasn't even born yet even.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the beach is set outside of time. It's really cool.
Oh, the mysteries of the Others Beach is just wonderful.
Yeah.
As you say, because you've got all these really intriguing things on that beach that tie in thematically or really specifically to things happening in the story. And I just find Others Beach really fascinating.
I do too. Yeah.
The experience, obviously, during Fool's Errand that we get, which I'm going to have to talk around or I'll burst into tears, is possibly one of the most beautiful endings to a character I've ever read. And for it to have happened alongside Dutiful losing his bond animal as well, almost gets overlooked to some degree with readers because we're so connected to Fitz. We're so connected to Night Eyes that grief overwhelms pretty much everything else happening in the story. And we have to be reminded constantly through the books that Dutiful lost an animal too.
Yeah.
And that really speaks to the way he behaves for the next couple of books. Where do you sit with what Hobb is trying to do with animal companions and those connections when she talks about those bonds?
Oh, it's heart-wrenching for me because I love my animals very dearly, and but she definitely paints a really realistic and beautiful picture, as if loss like that can be beautiful. Well, it can, but it takes time to become beautiful until after you've kind of gotten over that initial loss. And I think that's probably one of her strongest portrayals of what real grief is like. And I definitely think that's what she was trying to do with it as well. And and also the thing that they're never really completely gone,
Yeah.
or whether it's our human companions or our animal companions, there's always a piece of them that lingers. And I feel like also too, I feel like there's a little more than just lingering with Night Eyes.
Okay.
But I don't have enough information on that yet. But I feel like there were just some of the places in the Tawny Man series where we were getting statements in italics and everything about,
Yeah.
and I'm going, was that Night Eyes?
Yeah.
I'm
Well, that's the
so
thing, isn't it?
there's still, it's
speaks
like
to
she has a spiritual connection to Night Eyes in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I love that. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. So
yeah. And I mean, I get that. I sometimes will hear my mum when I'm in a situation. I lost my mum a long time ago now, nearly 20 years ago.
I did too.
And I can still hear her. If I'm about to do something and my brain will go in my mum's voice. No.
Right.
What are you playing at?
Right.
And it'll be in mum's cadence. It'll be in her words. It'll be very much my mother's voice in my head.
Right.
And she's been gone a long time. So I love that we get that with Fitz and Night Eyes, that he is such a presence within Fitz, that Fitz can still go, Night Eyes would say that, like, that voice is independent and is going to come in when Night Eyes would have an opinion.
Yeah.
And I love that. I do love that so much.
Yeah, I really do too. But yeah, when Night Eyes died, it took me a minute. I read
a lot
it.
Of people reread that,
and
bit
then I moved ahead and I read a couple more pages, and I'm like, wait, did I read that right? And I went back and read it, and I'm like,
yeah. A lot of readers do, because it does kind of, it doesn't feel like the tragedy that it is, because it is just a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And you read it and you accept it as this beautiful moment, and then you keep going and you hang on a minute.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Go back, read again, and then the context hits you and you're like, oh my God. I still struggle emotionally reading that.
I do too.
That part, even after the number of times I've read it, because it is. I mean, even though we
got
only
my tissue box next to me for that reason. It gets me too.
We actually haven't spent that much time on page with Night Eyes,
right?
But the relationship has been built so thoroughly, so completely, that the loss of him really hits hard. You know, that's a main character loss. You know, this isn't an animal companion loss. It's not a secondary character loss. It's a big heart piece of the story.
Yeah, it's not like what was it, Smithy?
Yeah,
and at the very it's not like
it's not the same.
It's not like that at all, because we didn't have enough time to get invested with his others, but with with Night Eyes, it was completely different. He was as much a part of Fitz as the Fool is.
Exactly. And the continuing theme of that, where as we go through the story, where we get Full referencing Night Eyes a lot and being included in his carvings, and the memory stone that he leaves Fitz as a gift at the end.
Yes,
There's
I
a
love
sense
that.
that Full understands how inherent Night Eyes is to Fitz's person. Like they were a single piece. You can't have one without the other.
Right.
And you talk about a well-written expression of grief in the way that we very much see the dullness of the world through Fitz after losing Night Eyes. There's also a sense, while you're reading the series, that grief has very cleverly also hidden what you learn at the end, where he's missing part of his character that we get back with the memories. And we kind of don't notice that he's missing that drive that he did have through Farseer because we were shown this grief so early. We're like, oh, okay, well, he just lost Night Eyes. Of course he's going to be dull-witted and just not really care as much. And then we find out what losing those memories has done to his character.
Right.
When we had that reveal with Fall, and he'd just been healed, and we've got Girl and a Dragon, you still don't have a sense where that's going.
Right.
And when we get to the moment, where was your brain? Because mine was doing fireworks. Mine was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, what were your thoughts as we got that reconnection of memory and
Oh man, that was really powerful for me, because it's like Fitz became a whole new person. He became a whole new person. He had everything back that were, and it kind of made that statement, you are no one without your grief and your emotions and the people that mean the most to you in life.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And
it's a theme. It's definitely a theme in the series where Hobb does a lot of work in showing you need your grief to be whole, and you need the pain, and you need those things that are horrible, because if you lose them, you can't heal from them.
Right.
You have to learn to integrate it with yourself and integrate the pain into your person to remain whole and move past. And we saw it in Live Ships. We saw what it does to you in Kennett, and that he literally lost the capacity to learn, to grow, to evolve. And he just was a broken person. He literally could not become something else.
Mm-hmm.
The severing of things that are too hard to deal with in the moment is a very natural and very human reaction.
Yeah.
And I had a difficulty myself reading Live Ships, where at the end of Ship of Destiny, Paragon takes Althea's pain. And I was like, that kind of undoes for me any healing that she does, because it's like this magical wand waving. Yeah. And I really struggled with it. And I spoke to my therapist about it, and it took me a while because I had to explain the plot. But she eventually got to the point where she said, okay, all that he's done is taken away like the first 2 years of therapy, where we're just working on moving beyond the emotion that come with it, the shame, the betrayal, the anger, before you can actually start looking at the event itself to heal through the event. And all he's done is shortcut that process of therapy and given her the distance that she needed. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the next time I read it, I was like, okay, I see it now. It isn't magic wand waving, because she does still have to go through the healing of this.
Right.
He never took the actual event away from
Yeah.
Althea, just that emotional impact.
Yeah.
And that's a very fine distinction that tells me Hobb has a good understanding of a person's psychology and the way grief and the way trauma impacts.
Yeah.
And so to see this in Fitz, where he has, in that reflex defense of himself, gone, I can't handle these new memories of my mother that I just got unlocked by Kettle when we unlocked her to help Verity. Can't deal with that out of nowhere. Put them into the dragon. He doesn't deal with any of it. So to suddenly get them all back again, he feels very young again in that moment. He feels very youthful. He feels like a teenager who has the energy to deal with stuff because he's just been given back the depth of emotion, just been given back that urge to do something about this.
Right.
And it's such an important part of healing.
It really is.
Always got some baggage. Just
Yeah,
got some baggage.
Yeah. It's a lot of baggage, a lot for him to deal with. But I think it was also important not only for him to come to grips with those things, but then to be able to move on in his life and experience life. I don't think he would have been good for Molly if he could not be his entire fullest self, grief and all.
Absolutely. But he wouldn't have had any drive to seek her out.
That's true. He wouldn't have, because that was part of what he lost, and now he got it back. And
that intensity of emotion, that ability to care enough that I will take the risk.
Yes.
And again, it comes back to the thematic work that Hobb is doing, that you need all of yourself to be able to move forward in your life. Otherwise, you're just in a cabin in the woods doing nothing with your life. And, so it's, and I've got the chat at the side here, and I'm sort of reading, and it does take a bit of energy to reread Thunel, absolutely.
It does.
And to read it at all, but it is also very cathartic. It's interesting that this is the thing today. Our lovely friend of the channel, Evie, she has a wonderful dog, Max, and who is a very necessary part of Evie's day-to-day life. And he's just had a quite severe health issue.
Oh no!
And it's obviously everybody's rallied around, and we're all out. And he's just come home from the vets. He's on the mend. Yay! We're all very happy that he's on the mend. But when things were very, on the wire, Evie deliberately went out and reread Fool's Errand because she just needed to have that cry. She needed that catharsis that the story could give her.
Yeah.
And that is something that I have always found with Realm of the Elderlings. I can cry for Fitz where I can't cry for myself.
Yeah.
And my therapist thinks that's the best thing in the world.
It is. Whatever can get you there and kind of give you that emotional release.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I know why I'm being triggered. I'm like, okay, that's because it resonates with things in my life.
I noticed Trotty was giving us big hugs in the chat earlier, and we need them, and
we do.
And Thornall says his mother died when he started reading the series, and that's a tough place to be. So I'm sorry.
And to take a break for a while, absolutely. Yeah. Always do that when a book's hitting you too close.
Sometimes it's too emotional when you're right in the moment of real life happening.
Absolutely. And yet there will now be times where going back to that will help, because you know how that feels. And you'll read it and you'll remember, and you'll be like, yeah, and I'm going to have a cry because I don't think about the fact that I was this sad and upset when this person was no longer part of my life, but I still do miss them. So I'm going to take this moment to have a cry for them.
Yeah.
Because I'm crying about the book.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm allowed to cry for a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the range of human experience that Hob gives you means that so many different moments for so many different readers really echo what's happening in our lives. And she gets them right. Even like if you lose somebody you're angry with, she gets the tone of that grief right. If you lose somebody you haven't seen for a long time, she gets the tone of that right.
She does.
And it's a little bit magic. Because she also gets those moments of joy right. We get the pain of something being so beautiful because it's too beautiful to deal with. We got it at the end of Fool's Fate, where we do get the resurrection of the Fool. I mean, who thought a series could do a resurrection twice?
Right, I know.
Earned.
Yeah,
this wasn't some Deus Ex Machina moment of magic. This was earned.
Yeah.
This had basis.
Yeah.
And we got that moment of joy that he's back. And we're going to move forward. But to live in that, we got false panic.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to continue living. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And just the pain of existing, to live in the joy of that moment. We have this character back. We have them still as part of our story, as part of our lives. And there have been instances when I've had people around me have gone through something really traumatic that they didn't really think they might get out the other side of, that do. And then they're like, I was ready to go. Not entirely sure what I'm going to do now, because I'd made peace with things.
Yeah. It's like a whole, it's a whole new beginning for the Fool.
Yeah.
Because he felt like he had one destiny, and now what is his destiny?
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm sure we'll see more of that in the Fitz and the Fool, because I get the feeling that he's going to discover that that his true destiny all along maybe was to live in symbiosis with Fitz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely another theme that we get throughout the series, this intertwined sense that they are necessary to each other, in the same way that Night Eyes is necessary as part of Fitz. But when we talked briefly about new characters and other plot lines, did you have a favorite thing about Tawny Man that stands out specific to Tawny Man, or live ships, because obviously that's part of the conversation as well, that really brought something that you didn't expect? Or
well, I think well, I guess I'll talk about one of my favorite revelations. And it took my buddy read partner to clue me into it. And that was Amber. because all throughout the entire book, I was just thinking, okay, Amber this, Amber that. And then I got to the end of the book and I read everything, and we had the whole new carving for
Paragon's face.
For Paragon's face, and it was obviously patterned after Fitz, but I didn't make the connection. And she's like, no, you need to go back and reread that. I'm like, okay, so because she told me, and I'm like, wait, I did not see that. And then I went back and reread it, and I'm like, oh my God. So I didn't make.
There are definitely people who don't make the connection until they hit Tawny
And then
Man.
of course we got to see more of the amber, and I won't call it a disguise because I think
No,
amber is part of the Fool. So
absolutely.
it's but we got to see more of that in Tawny Man, and that just kind of solidified that character more for me. But when I first got to the end of Live Ship, I'm like, you're kidding me. Wait, what? And I mean, I always knew that, even from the Farseer trilogy, it was obvious that that the Fool was not as concerned about gender as
No,
everybody else was.
that's right.
It's just,
There was also an
I am who I
androgynous.
am, whether
Yeah.
I'm expressing feminine qualities
Mhm.
or dressing, however I dress, whoever I am, it's who I am. It's not what society wants me to be. It's
Yes.
just who I am. And that kind of
Yeah,
goes back to the whole thing of, uh, you know, I put no limits on my love for you, Fitz.
that's right.
It's just,
Yeah.
he
The love is there and it will
the
take
love is
whatever
there,
form.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember laughing so hard at the end. I think it was in the middle actually of um, uh, Assassin's Quest when he got reunited with the Fool, and then they were talking
Yes.
about because Starling had
That's right.
gone to
Starling
Fitz
got
and said,
jealous.
I
That's
think
right.
I think the Fool is a woman. and
Mhm.
and so he was talking to the Fool about it, and typical Fool fashion, he goes off on this little thing
Yeah.
about when the Fool tinkles, does he jingle or jingle or whatever like that,
Yeah.
and I just
A
died
dimple or
laughing because
dangle. Yeah.
yeah, it's obviously not important to the Fool like it is to everyone else, but what's
No.
important is being true to yourself
Mhm.
and loving the people that you love. And who cares about gender or how you dress or whatever? You are who you are. And that's
That's right.
that's what the Fool loves them for, and what
Yes.
that's
I love
how
this
he wants
person.
to be
Their body
loved.
is not. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how
And
he
I
wants to
I
be loved in
loved
return.
how he
Yeah.
tried to explain that to Fitz, where he's like, "Well, do you love Molly? Do you only love her because of what's between her legs?"
Right.
No. Okay, so you kind of get it. Fitz never quite seems to have made the leap any further, but he sort of understands,
Right.
but it makes him uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
there's a wonderful thing in Tawny Man where, as they're having this very, like I capitalize it and call it the argument,
Yeah.
where they're not talking to each other. It's all very adolescent.
Yeah, it
There's
is.
it comes about in such a way that's very quiet, in that for the longest time, Fitz has been acting as the manservant to Lord Golden, and he's been going to get Lord Golden's breakfast. And every morning, one of the maids puts a posy on the tray,
Yeah.
and he's given the tray to Fool. Fool
Yeah.
is receiving this tray every morning, believing that these posies are from. So
Mhm.
he spent months thinking, he's showing me he cares. Fitz is oblivious because
Yeah.
Fitz,
He fits, yeah.
but it means that the Fool is coming to that argument thinking that Fitz is trying to show
Yeah.
him that he cares, and he's not. So that it's easy to overlook that the Fool is just as hurt by this as Fitz,
Yeah.
and they're both coming at it with very raw but misunderstood points of view.
Yeah.
It's really, really sad, because the hint is there that this is the same maid that loved Fool in Farseer, and that she recognized him, and that's all she was doing. She was saying, "I still see you." And oh, I thought that was just so beautiful.
Yeah. It really
But it
was.
didn't help the Fitz and Fool argument,
Right.
because that didn't help. There was very much a sense for me that Hobb was very much trying to say to people, stop getting fixed with a sense of right and wrong
Yeah.
about deciding who you can love.
Yeah.
because that's really all it came down to for
Yes,
Fitz.
absolutely.
And I liked the fact that Fool said to him, I've always known that was a limit for you, and I would never go there because
Yeah,
I already know that's a limit for you, and I love you. I don't want to push you where you don't want to go.
yeah, hmm,
And now you've made me say that out loud. You know,
right.
I love that.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's easier to not say the words
it
and let
is.
it be.
Yeah,
And yeah, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, because Fitz never really grasps what Fool is trying to say, and that Amber is as much a part of me
hmm,
as the Fool persona, as Lord Golden. These are all parts of me. I'm not putting on an act. These are just, I'm letting this part of me shine.
yeah,
And when she was Amber, when they were Amber in live ships, she never hid who she was. And
yeah,
that's
right.
possibly the most wonderful thing when you reread, because you can see Fool right on page from the
Yeah,
moment you meet Amber, once you know that's who they are, because they're not hiding who they are.
yeah,
They're just showing you a different face.
yeah, right. And I think you're right, Derry, because we we probably didn't pick up on it because we didn't know to be looking for that. We wouldn't have
No,
expected that to be the case. But then on a reread, yeah, I have no doubt that I could probably see, oh, yeah, that's obviously the fool.
yeah,
Or
and that's the
obviously
joy
Amber.
of a
Yeah.
reread.
Mhm.
As you realize that nothing was ever hidden. It's always
Yeah.
been on page, but you just didn't understand that what you were reading was what was actually happening. You just
Yeah.
needed that veil taken. And once you have that knowledge, that reread really informs you a lot
Yeah.
about who Fool is, and or Amber, or Lord Golden, whichever name you choose to give him. The clear drive to make the world better,
Yeah.
where Amber is trying to help the slave situation that's happening in Bingtown. Amber is trying to get the people of the three ships more integrated. She's
Yeah.
really working hard to form connections between the factions in
Yeah.
Bingtown because they need that unity to move forward.
Hmm.
We see her as Amber showing Althea how to act like a man. This is
Yeah.
how you walk. This is the behaviors you need. This is where you need to put your weight when you're moving.
Yeah.
So there's an understanding of the expectation is of this. So to meet that expectation, behave this way.
Right.
You don't have to change who you are, but be aware of the expectation.
Right.
And then we, as you know, Joseph very rightly says here, give me a face you can love is such a powerhouse of a line.
It really is.
When you read that knowing that this is Fool,
Yeah.
and you read the care that is going into the way Paragon is being recarved,
Mhm.
and the defensiveness in Amber when someone just says to her, why have you given him a broken nose? There's nothing wrong with his nose. You know,
Right.
there's this instant defensiveness. Don't you tell me that's not the way he should look.
Right.
The love is apparent that no,
Yeah. It
this
is.
person genuinely loves the reason for this image, this character that nobody in live ships knows.
Yeah.
And it carries through really beautifully. Again, the respect for boundaries, the respect for, do you really want this? We get the Fool joining the coterie meeting,
Yeah.
and they're all like, oh, well, you need to include him and you can reach him and blah. And they really encourage you. No, you do the thing. And Fool is really, really intensely asking Fitz, do you want this?
Yeah. Right.
Are you okay with this? Not knowing what he's agreeing to, Fitz says yes. And that no holds barred sharing frightens the living daylights out of him.
Oh, absolutely.
That is too much emotion. He cannot handle it.
Yeah.
But not because he didn't like it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what frightened him.
He just wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if oh, hi Maxwell. I kind of wonder if he had had the full extent of his emotions and experiences, he may have been able to handle that better.
Yeah.
And now that he does, I think maybe going into the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, we'll see more of an emotional connection there that we didn't have before. Even though he may still not go certain places and explore those boundaries, he will probably be much more open to the Fool in a lot of respects, I think, and maybe that would have prepared him better for that moment when the Fool opened the floodgates and said, "Okay, are you ready for this?"
Like,
But
do you really
he
want to know?
wasn't, because
No,
he didn't have the fullness of himself to bring to
that's
that
right.
moment.
That's right,
Yeah,
because he's still so damaged, and
yeah,
I firmly believe this. He is so frightened of loving somebody because of the sheer volume of rejection he's had in his life, and he's chopped away his
yeah,
mother giving him away. He's chopped away his grandfather dumping him on a doorstep. He's chopped away those parts of him that he couldn't then grow up with and find the explanations for and find peace with, to let himself be open to caring for somebody else again.
yeah,
Because he just isn't. He's so terrified of that rejection. Molly left him
yeah,
for Burrage. I mean, there's no way he's open to accepting love from anybody, let
right.
alone being brave enough to care back.
Mm-hmm.
That's risky. That's dangerous. It's going to really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that in his fear, that he wanted it so much. You see it in the description. He feels himself turn toward it like a
Yeah,
flower to the sun, and you're like, oh, how beautiful. And his rejection of it,
yeah.
and throwing himself out of it. Just out of curiosity, is there any evil central force that is everybody's problem? There,
Probably spoilers, huh?
kind of. It's one of those things. It's like on the reread,
Yeah,
noticeable, but until you get context, not.
yeah,
So most people are only going to read it one time, and there are connections that are there. I mean, you see it. You've read Tawny Man. You've seen now that there's more to the Pale Woman, and how that inferred what was happening in Farseer.
right.
So you've already got a sense of the way the series works, and that you learn things that inform previous events.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's more of that to come, in that things that have happened that made perfect sense
yeah,
now have more context, and like, oh, okay, that was actually a bigger picture than I realized. So kind of yes. but yeah, it won't fall into place until much later.
yeah,
I mean, even just with getting through to, I'm just trying to remember what gets revealed when. We do get the knowledge at this point that the Pale Woman's interactions in Farseer were to turn Regal against Fitz.
yes.
That was
Yep.
part of the Pale Woman's plan, that suddenly Regal's motivations are more informed. And you're like, oh, okay, there was more to that than we knew in Farseer.
Yeah,
So there are things that are visible when you reread,
yeah,
again, because you're like, oh, I know now that there was intent behind this throwaway line, that
yeah,
he's been selling scrolls. We find out in Tawny Man, he's been selling them to the Pale Woman, and
yeah,
that connection is deliberate, and it's to undermine Fitz, and it's to undermine the skill, and it's to
yes,
damage the Farseers for reasons you just aren't even aware of in Farseer.
yeah.
So
And even at the end, she's she's kind of in that process of destroying the scrolls. That if I can't
I
have
can't have
them,
them.
I'm certainly not going to let you have them. And I'm glad they get some back because they can learn more about the skill and things like that. But I'm sure there's still so much that they've lost in that because of what Regal did. And I also kind of wonder. I feel like there's a connection between the Elderlings and the prophets. Like throughout the entire series, I've always kind of wondered if the fool is at least part Elderling, maybe like half
Mhm.
Elderling. But I'm also wondering if there's some kind of overarching nemesis that is trying to steer the line of prophets in general to do their bidding. And because we get the pale woman, she was raised a certain way, she was told that her destiny was such and such, and she went about it a different way than the fool probably is,
Yeah.
or probably ever will. And then of course we get the other prophet who has failed, and
Hmm.
he's been waiting to see if another prophet would come on the scene, and
Yeah.
things like that, because he thought the pale woman was the one he was waiting for, but she wasn't.
Yeah.
She turned the
And Prokop
table.
is a really mysterious
I
character because
love
he's
him so.
so old.
Yeah,
And he brings that very mysterious kind of, oh, okay, there's a lot of knowledge we don't have.
yeah.
Mm.
And I was also kind of I was amazed to see the the direction, even as far as shedding his skin.
Yeah.
At some point, we may be looking with him at what the fool is going to be in the future, because it seems like with each step in his journey, he sheds his
Yeah.
skin and he becomes.
He gains
So
that little bit of
he,
color and
he
yeah.
yeah, changes that little bit of color. He kind of feels to me like a phoenix,
Hmm.
because he's dying and being resurrected, and every time he does, he's still the same phoenix in a way, but also something brand new. And
Yeah. It's something a little bit more. And yeah.
yeah, and so I'll be curious to see as the journey goes along what the fool is going to look like, and how much deeper and richer his knowledge and understanding of his purpose is going to be.
Yeah. No,
So
that's really interesting. I love that you've gone in that direction. That's wonderful. And I can see your own journey as a writer, knowing how to build things. Like,
mm,
okay, I need to put these in. And so yeah, that's great thinking
mm.
on your part. And can you remember what Prokop's catalyst did to change the future? Or was it that he failed, that he still had to wait for the next generation? Now, Prokop achieved pretty much everything he was set out to do. That's why he is the black man.
Yeah,
He's gone through of I succeeded changes, and he's pretty much just outlived his catalyst. And the
right.
very last vision that he had was of another prophet, because he hasn't fixed everything, and so the world wants to go back to this dark path. It wants to fall back into the rut of history that I mean, I love that metaphor where it's we're in the wheel. We're just going round and round in circles, doing the same things, which we see in all generational trauma repeating. And Fitz is the stone that Fool uses to jump that wheel out of its rut.
Hmm.
So Prokop was waiting for this next pair of prophet and catalyst to change the world for the better. And not wanting to get in the way of what they were doing. He didn't want to interfere because he knows that messes things up. So
Yeah,
all he could do was kind of point them in the right direction. So we get the
yeah,
sneaky round, and we're not going to take the offering from the bunch of men who come to witness. We're going to take the fool's honey, because
yeah,
that's the quest we're going to encourage. And I'm going to lead them to the cave, to the underground city was light. I'm not going to take them there myself.
Right.
I'm just going to put you in the way of meeting your prophetic moment, but not involved. And he's also so much older that he's working very different form of teaching. I mean, he talks to Fool about the school they both went to. He's like, that's not what I got taught. This, okay. There's clearly more to that story. And we see it when at the end Procop says you can't now be around Fool because unintentionally the two of you in the same place is going to cause change. Yes. That's what you do. So you can't be around him. He has to be separated until he figures out what his next thing is. Otherwise, you're going to make changes that maybe aren't supposed to happen and could be bad.
Yeah.
And he very deliberately separates the two of them.
Yeah.
You know, the outcome of which is still to come. But I did find it charming that Thick likes Procop and just was quite happy to hang out in Procop's cave.
Yeah, I like that too. That was great. And I think there is a sense in which the Fool being resurrected was maybe not supposed to happen, even though I think it also was supposed to happen, which is a strange paradox, but it was a change that will irrevocably inform what happens in the future. And maybe it was supposed to just kind of be left alone, but I think Fitz and the Fool's story is such that it also had to happen to shape who they are to become. And you know, I still kind of felt like at the very end of the book when he got together and he married Molly and everything like that, it still felt like an ending.
Yes.
Even though there are other beginnings to come. And I know there's other beginnings to come, but I can see why at the end of the Tawny Man trilogy, it felt like an end. And I think originally she had planned that.
Yes.
To be the end, and then she decided to write another story. So
and then there was obviously the characters in her head going, we're not done.
Right.
Because we haven't had answers to Elderlings. We haven't had the unfolding of the entire story yet.
Yeah.
And
I've heard she's even writing some more stuff now. That I don't know, but that's just what I've heard. But
it's all right. I have goosebumps for a second because when I got up this morning and checked Discord, Kyle was able to speak briefly with Robin Hobb at some point yesterday, and she's confirmed she's writing two
new books or two new series.
2 new books.
Oh wow!
And I'm a little bit beside myself. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
because it's so exciting.
That's very exciting. I will read anything in the realm of the Elderlings. I mean, I've read outside realm of the Elderlings as well. I've read I read Wizard of the Pigeons, which I absolutely loved.
And you can see a lot of the same thematics work around trauma. And I
told her that too, because I met her at the Comic-Con here in Phoenix, and I thanked her for all she did in Realm of the Elderlings, but I spoke with her also about Wizard of the Pigeons because I had just recently read it at that point, and we had a lovely little talk about it. And apparently it's one of the books that means a lot to her in her writing journey, and so that was it. She's a wonderful person.
That comes across loud and clear. Her Facebook, her Instagram, and I mean, she lives very close to nature. She has very close connections with her pets, and that love of her animals, I think, very much informs her writing because her animal characters are characters. Any one of us who have had pets know they're as individual as people.
Yes,
and she's able to give us that in the story. I mean, we meet some more witted in Tawny Man, and we meet Webb with his bird. I really liked Webb as a character. I liked his gentleness. I liked his very non-confrontational way of engaging with Fitz. I really, really appreciated that.
I appreciated Webb very much as well, and I liked the fact that he made it very clear to Fitz, I brought it up a couple of times, but I'm going to stop bringing it up to you.
But actually, on you.
Yeah, he's like, what if you really want my help, you're going to come seek me out. He's not going to chase Fitz. He made that very clear, and I think that was good. I think that's what Fitz needed. Fitz needed to realize for himself that he needed Webb's help.
Yeah.
And
it was another indication here of what Fitz had lost. Because he wanted very much in Farseer to return to Rolf and learn about his witted nature. And he kind of didn't. And that drive to find out and to maximize what he could learn wasn't there anymore. That drive to grow. Right. And we see that in that conversation with Webb. And we also see it after he's got his memory back, because you see him actively trying to do more and going, oh, Webb's about to go wandering now with Swift. I've missed my moment. Yeah. And they're actually bothering him. That, I wanted to get more from that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the subtle pieces of writing that I just love so much about the series, because it's just quietly informing you that he has had growth since those first conversations with Webb. I liked the fact that, however heartbreaking it has been with Burrick in Tawny Man, because we saw at the beginning of Golden Fool, Burrick has lived his previous 20-odd years believing Fitz died right at the beginning of Assassin's Quest. After being resurrected, they've brought him back to life, yay! And then has died because he's gone feral. And he's believed that. He's believed that to the depth of his soul. And because he's lost Fitz to what he believes is his wit, he's punishing Swift, because he doesn't want that for his other son either.
Right.
And all of that's informed by this false knowledge of Fitz's death. So that traumatic generational repeating of behavior, which so informs a lot of the story, is, bless you, is still there. And we see the damage that it does to Swift in having his father be so aggressively against him learning anything about his wit, that Swift has bounced so hard the other way that, no, I'm going to run away. I'm going to learn about this thing that you aren't helping me with.
Yeah.
Where had Fitz been able to return to Burrick, and he might have if he'd kept his memories, that relationship with Swift could have been so very different. And we know now how much knowledge Burrick wasn't able to pass on with how Webb reacted to him, because Webb was in awe. He's like, you know how to do things I thought we'd lost.
Yeah.
And then they lost it. And the tragedy of it, on top of the personal tragedy of losing Burrick, it's just so, what can I mean, it's just, it's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. I know Chadia asked earlier, were you content with the ending? And
well, I mean, it's a wonderful closing line to the series, to that point, that I am content. Yes. But it doesn't say I am happy, because content is a very different thing to happy. Content is like, this is what I have. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't and I think that's very key, Derry, because he's he's content with what he has so far. He's got
Yes.
Molly back. He's got, he's smoothed things over with patience as much as is possible. She's always going to be patience,
Oh, yes.
or the antithesis of her name, really.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I
I
don't
love
think
it.
I don't think happiness will really come for him until he reconnects with the Fool. And
Because he's incomplete still.
yeah, he is. Yeah.
Um, and I agree, and that is apparent even in Tawny Man. You're aware that how necessary they are to
Yeah.
each other in terms of just being. Um, and again, that's sometimes there are parts of your life that you just need
Mm,
for
indeed.
no other reason that life isn't right
Right.
without these pieces.
Mm,
And we've we talk about the way Hobb writes her characters and how wonderful all of these characters are. The fact that all of this is in Fitz's story is written first person is kind of astonishing, and we do need to be reminded often that we're
yes.
seeing this through Fitz's eyes. Other people aren't seeing this the same way.
Right.
So I loved when we got Patience back. I loved that. I loved that she passes out in the marigolds. I think that's marvelous.
Hmm.
I just well, Lacey passes out in the marigolds, but there's a sweetness to that
Yes.
because we've learnt at this point through Dutiful that Patience has always considered him a son
Yes.
because my other boy did it this way.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
know boys, I've had one of my own.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, she always loved him so much.
Yeah. And I
I
loved
mean,
when
that
they
was
first
just beautiful.
I loved when they first got reconnected that she was just like, how could you do that to me?
How dare you? And I
Typical
loved her
patient
rage
fashion.
because that is how a mum would feel. How dare you let me
Yeah.
think you were dead? How that was a theft. You took those years from me.
Yes.
I loved that anger. It was right.
It was. It was
This is
right,
a
and it's
human
exactly
reaction.
how anybody would react to
Yeah,
that. I mean, there's a sense of relief that they are still alive, but that's not going to be
yeah.
your first reaction.
No.
Yeah, I mean
And you
the
see that conflict in her, the joy that, oh my God, he's actually alive, and the anger at how
yeah,
dare you not tell me? How dare
yeah,
you let me think that for that long?
yeah, yeah. Because first
And
comes the
yeah,
slap, and then you give the hug afterwards.
that's right.
But first, it's like, how dare you do?
Yeah. Because that anger is visceral because she will have felt the loss of those years. And we
Mhm.
see it in the way Dutiful describes his time with Patience, that she does miss Fitz.
Yeah,
And to see that in a first person piece of writing is kind of glorious
it
that
is.
we that you can see it without visions or skill dreams or some of the other tricks that she uses to inform you what's happening somewhere else.
Right.
There was so much she's able to tell you, even using first person. Which
Yeah.
brings me to how did you find the shift to third person when you were reading live ships? Was that how talk to me?
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, that was a lot easier because most of
Mm-hmm.
what I read is third person, with a few exceptions. The Dresden Files, of course, is first person and everything, but I first person does not always click with me, even though
Mm-hmm.
I very much enjoyed the first person stories from Hobb. Live Ship was a lot easier reading for me because of the third person. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like it. I felt like it was a natural transition because
Mm-hmm.
um, it these are secondary stories to Fitz and the Fool.
Yes.
So um, it's almost like, okay, Fitz is telling his story, and then she takes a break to show us, oh, okay, and here's what's happening over here, and I'm just going to tell you about that rather than have you hear it from one of their
Yes.
voices.
Yeah,
And
this is
I
stuff you
felt
need
like,
to know for
yeah,
Fitz's story.
yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah,
think I have a feeling that Rain Wild is going to be the same way.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it'll be more, from what I understand, it is third person
yeah,
again, and we're going to
yeah.
get
We do
more
the
of that.
same thing. We
But
shift
I
to a
feel like
different
it's
place, different people. We're now
yeah,
going to inform the next part of Fitz's his story.
hmm
And yeah,
yeah,
I did. There's been a bit of chatter lately. People asking, "Can I read live ships first?" I personally push back very, very firmly on that. No, read Farseer first,
right,
simply because the quest in Farseer is to wake dragons.
yeah,
It is to find elderlings and wake dragons. If you read live ships first, you have a very different idea about what elderlings and dragons are. So
yes,
to then read Farseer, it just feels like it undermines the drive of Assassin's Quest, because you know that's not what they're going to find. They're
yeah.
going to find something different. And when they do find it, you're like, well, that's not. And that bothers me. It's like, no, I need you to find things out the right way.
Yeah, I can appreciate that for sure. And
Yeah.
like you and I were talking earlier, I think there are things that um there are things that I felt really dragged and didn't need to take as long as they did in Assassin's Quest. And then by the time I got to the end of live ship traders, and we were in the underground collapsed temple,
Yeah.
and we found out about uh, the the room that they actually made the stone dragons in as an homage to the actual
Yes.
dragons and things like that. That gave me a deeper appreciation for what I saw in the garden in
Yeah.
Assassin's Quest in the Stone Garden. And I think I could have read Live Ship first, but it would have been a different experience because
Yeah.
there wouldn't have been the mystery around the stone dragons if I had read
Yeah.
it read that first and then gone and read Farseer. I don't think it would
Yeah.
have had the same impact because at the end of Assassin's Quest, there were so many unanswered questions about what exactly happened there.
Yeah.
But Live Ship Traders and then even Tawny Man further defines
Yeah.
those mysteries and adds more mysteries.
Yeah. It answers some of the big ones and then it makes you ask far more. But
Yes.
yes, I
Yeah.
mean, I my personal understanding of the series is that the major theme is that memory is self.
Yeah.
Without your memories, you're not a person. You're not whole.
Yes.
You aren't an entity that is individual.
hmm
And the value of individual life, whereas each individual trilogy and the story sort of highlights a different aspect to that. Live Ships for me has a lot to say about value of humanity, because it's got such a huge theme around slavery, not just in that we have slaves in the
Yeah.
story who are working for their freedom, but we
hmm
have these ships who are sentient but are owned. And what will that mean if they can possibly become free?
hmm
And the pushback that we see from the council and the immediate reaction from Brashen and Althea. If we're here, you
hmm
should have spoken to us first.
Right.
I mean, I had an argument on air with Jose in Spain about a year ago,
Oh
where
yeah.
he's like,
Yeah. I
no,
know.
they should have asked. And I'm like, no, they shouldn't have, because because Paragon is their own person, and
Yeah.
nobody else should get a say in whether or not he goes free.
Yeah.
And I thought that that was a really important conversation that she was having
hmm
around freedom and the changes that society has to encompass
hmm
to allow for freedom.
hmm
I mean, what did you take from live ships in terms of the greater meaning and the bigger themes?
So much. Yeah, I mean, you kind of already touched on personhood. I think that was a huge one. Um, what constitutes a sentient being and someone who should have their own agency and values and feelings and things like that. And because the live ships are alive, they're not just possessions. They're not just things to be owned and um, sailed on and everything. They're actually living beings, and they can be, uh, they can be traumatized. They can be, um, they can have these experiences, like with Paragon being ripped away from his crew and being abused by other crews.
Yeah.
So I think personhood is the big theme, and we even see that a little bit, with Amber. Is who you are what you look like, or is who you are your experiences, your loves, your values, the things that are most important to you in life? Is it your inner self, or is it what you look like on the outside? And when she was carving Fitz's face in the for Paragon, is it his nose, or is it who he is that's most important? So I think those are the biggest themes that I took away for sure. Um, and I mean, most definitely grief and loss. Um, uh, uh, the um, loss of possibilities, for the serpents. A lot of the serpents were, pretty much had their psyches completely destroyed, and they lost all sense of themselves, and others didn't and were able to salvage. But we even get some information on how even the serpents that did survive, they will never be the dragons that they could have been
That's
had
right.
they had the time to be nurtured and cocooned and
And gain
grow
the
to their
memories
fullest
that they were
potential.
entitled to,
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
because memory is so fundamental. And we see that with the dragons, in that the serpents who survive don't have all of their memories.
Mhm.
They are very limited in what they can now pass on. So it's not just about what they are, but as you say, the possibility that was lost. All of
Yeah,
those serpents who became animalistic, who lost memory, lost identity, lost sentience.
yeah,
What did they lose in that? Because we learn over the course of life ships that dragons are passing memory for all of their lives and
yeah,
all of the lives before them. So we're getting all of dragon history, if you
yeah,
like, being passed on. How many of those individual memories are now lost for all time in the serpents that were denied a chance to procreate and grow and keep living? The the callback again to the value of memory, and that memory is, this core of who we are. Holding true for dragons is oh, just
yeah,
just wonderful. Um, and the understanding that the characters in live ships reach eventually, of the impact they're about to have on the world.
yes.
That
Oh my goodness, yes.
this is going to be a thing, because we've met a dragon now. Tintaglia is a force.
Oh,
And then we
yeah,
meet Icefire. And
yeah,
these two dragons are the only two dragons left with
yeah,
full memories.
yes,
Anything happens to either one of those, and dragonkind is in trouble, because these
yes,
two are the ones that have the knowledge. But they're both incredibly arrogant, and they're
yeah,
both incredibly entitled. And why wouldn't they be?
yeah,
Mike over at Mike's Book Reviews doesn't like Hobbes dragons because
Yeah.
they're not what did he call them? I can't remember the term he used, but they're not sort of big honor kind of gracious, all-knowing beings.
Right.
And you know, they're this selfish and petty and I'm like, well, yeah, because they're giant cats.
Yeah. Well,
Bob writes them as giant cats. They're massive predators.
and I think that's more realistic, to be honest, because I don't know that creatures as majestic and powerful as dragons would not be arrogant. I think they would be very arrogant.
Well, hey, those of us who have got house cats that are like this big know how arrogant they are.
Oh my! Yes.
Could you imagine the size of the dragons that we're shown in Hob, where they can literally do anything they like?
Yeah.
Why should anybody else's opinion matter to them?
Speaking of, are you going to come out? See, my cat owns me, not the other way around.
Exactly. You know, you talk about that, don't you? You know, people with dogs have pets. People with cats are staff.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yes. We are staff. That is very.
We're absolutely staff, and I like that in her dragons, and I also like the fact that because there is, you know, during life ships just one, there's Tintaglia, she has to rely on humans, and you see how much she hates it.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, pretty. And because she needs them. She needs them to form a channel for the serpents to go and cocoon them. She needs their help.
Yeah.
She has figured out that to exist, she has to have the aid and assistance of humans.
Right.
And as much as she hates it, she has to engage with them. She has to negotiate with them. So both species are now fundamentally altered in the way they have to interact, which I find fascinating because Icefire also needed human intervention.
He did.
He needed humans to get him out of the ice. He needed humans to get him free of the stone dragon so that he could escape.
Yeah.
He owes his very existence to humans.
Yeah.
That these are the only two dragons left of with history to pass on, both having such key memories of the necessity of humans is going to be interesting.
It will be. And they even kind of said as much at the end. They talked about the importance of learning or maybe relearning what it's going to be like now that there's dragons in the world again.
Yeah.
Because, you know, up until now, they've mostly been, you know, regaled to myth and legend. And then now there's dragons in the world again. And how do we live our lives in a world where there are dragons, you know, because I mean, how are we going to feed them? How are we going to, you know?
Yeah. And to some degree, we have to acknowledge that we don't have to feed them. They're going to feed themselves, but they feed themselves from our herds. They're going to feed themselves from our profit-giving animals because they don't see ownership as a thing. And that pushing us off the top of the pile, I think, is the key part of it, where humanity has to learn that we aren't the top predator anymore.
Right.
Something is out there that will put limits on us. And I like that. I like that that's going to be, because it's going to be something that impacts the humanity in the world of this, however long that takes. Yeah. Because, you know, at this point, there's still only two. So,
yeah, but it definitely, it changes the ecosystem. It changes so many things because now these humans have more to think about than just themselves, and maybe and more to think about than just their herds and their horses and themselves. Now they've got to think about, okay, how do we appease dragons if it comes to where we have to appease them, and
Yeah.
how
How do
does
we
that
live in
all
a way
work?
they don't
And
come down on us?
yes,
Because that's
yeah,
going to be bad.
yes, most definitely.
Um, there's and the wonderful life cycle that we got of dragons, which apparently is based on dragonflies. Um,
Okay.
tickled me quite a bit because obviously in live ships we start with serpents chapters and these
Mhm.
are very strange and what are these all about. Did it take you to the the reveal that they were dragons, or had you started to think, oh, okay, this is the phase of dragons? Where
I
did it
had
sort of come to you?
started to think, yeah, I had started to think that maybe they were dragons, but I wasn't quite sure. But as certain things happen, especially when we met She Who Remembers,
Yeah.
and we started learning about what wizardwood is,
Mm-hmm.
that it comes basically from the cocoons of dragons. Then I started putting two and two together. Okay, so this
Yeah.
is more of a metamorphosis, kind of like a caterpillar growing into a
Yeah.
butterfly, except it's the serpents growing into dragons.
Mm.
And so yeah, it didn't take me all the way up until the reveal, but it was pretty close. It was
Yeah.
I didn't it didn't quite click with me until probably about 100 pages before that,
Yeah.
maybe. So
Because I loved the terminology that she gave the serpents as well. Things like the
yeah.
lack and the plenty, and it
Hmm.
takes your brain a minute to kind of go, oh, the air and the water, okay. And there was I remember the moment that I first figured out that they were part of the life cycle of dragons. There was a scene where they found some ruins, and they were entwined around an arch. They were holding themselves. They were anchored by an arch, and
Uh-huh.
one of them suddenly remembers what that arch looked like from the sky. And I thought that means they flew. Oh my god, these are somehow dragons.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't know how they got there, but I was like, oh, this is part of it.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm looking for the connections. Like, how is it connected? How, and then we get the hints in the wizardwood. And so yeah, but it
And
took me. I think that's in the second book as well. It took me a fair while to collect those dots.
yeah. And I kind of
Mm.
wonder too if because of She Who Remembers having been imprisoned on Others Island, I kind of wonder if Others Island was not one of the original nesting grounds for the
Yes.
dragons,
Yeah.
because how would
How would they have captured her
whatever they
otherwise?
were,
Yeah.
the creatures that live on Others Island, how would they have come across the wizard wood that they pandered in the first place?
Yeah.
And yeah, so but
Yeah. Good thinking. Good
yeah,
thinking. No,
so so
you're
many.
getting what she's putting out there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm getting
You're
it.
picking it
Yeah,
up. It's all
and
good.
and I loved the reveal too about the witness stones in the Six
Yes.
Duchies actually being portals
Big
themselves.
pillars.
They'd
Yeah.
just been scrubbed clean of the runes or whatever,
Yeah.
and then seeing how that was tied back to portal travel for the Elderlings,
Yeah.
and and the and how easy it is to get lost in, if you're not strong enough to make the journey, to get lost in the ether between the
Yeah.
stones and things like that. That was just fascinating.
Oh, yeah,
I
the portals are
love
one of
that.
my favorite devices in the series. I mean,
Yeah,
they really are ingenious. And the witness stones in general, because they carry that air of mystery and of legend around them. You're like, oh, okay, and then you discover that they're actually portal stones. You're like, well, that explains why they're this thing of myth and legend. Weird
right,
things happen there, because clearly there will have been people over the generations not knowing that they're skilled, falling into them.
right.
And the witness stones become this place of mystery.
Mhm.
because somebody's gone long enough and they pop back out of the witness stones and you're like, come in.
Yeah.
Okay, this place is weird and spooky.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much.
It reminded me a lot of the stone groves in different places in England and such, like
Yeah,
Stonehenge and everything
yeah,
like that. I'm like, I see what you're doing there, Robin.
yeah. And it's a wonderful take on a lot of those stone
It
circle
is.
legends,
Yeah.
because those fairy tales do have those elements that you go
Yeah.
in and you lose time, and you are with another people experiencing a different world, and you may or may not come back in your own time.
Yeah.
And I really liked the way that she played with that here. I thought that
Yeah.
was really clever, and gives us some answers to the stones and left us with some more mysteries.
Yeah.
So, and the joy of this for me is knowing that you're going to go into the Rain Wilds in the new year, and the Rain Wilds, it gets a lot of flack for being the weakest of the realm of the Elderlings, and I think it's the interference from publishers has a lot to do with it. It should have
Yeah.
been a duology. So the first two books have been split and padded,
Yeah.
and the second two should have been one as well. So knowing that helps, and letting it be what it is the other bit. Don't go in
Yeah.
with expectations. If you just
Right.
let it tell you the story, it's as strong as the rest. If you just let it be what it is, which is different to the rest.
Yeah.
But the lore that you get in the Rain Wild answers a phenomenal number of questions.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to leave you with the mysteries that will be solved in Fitz and the Fall.
Oh, I'm so
But you
excited.
get so much information in Rain
Yeah.
Wilds. So much information in Rain Wilds. And some of my favorite characters. So for all that we've met some of the most wonderful characters already, we've had Patience finally realizing Fitz is alive again. We've
Right.
got Riddle. Riddle's great.
Mhm.
Fan of
Riddle
Riddle.
is great.
Webb, Swift, all of these characters. Ketrican's still obviously a core piece of Fitz's life. Shade. We've got all these marvelous characters. And knowing who you're still to meet and the adventures still to come is such a wonderful place for me to know where you are. It's like, it's just a magical thing because you're right in the middle of it. And you've
Yeah.
hit this massive peak and you've had the satisfaction of closing that first lot of arc and knowing the final arc to come, or what has until now been the final arc. We've got more to come, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently, and
So
I'm excited for it.
I
And
mean, I'm beside myself.
can we talk about Shade for a minute?
Of
Because
course.
I absolutely loved his journey in this series, because for the first time we're seeing a vulnerability to Shade that
Yes.
we have not seen before, because he's all of a sudden not the master. He
Yes.
has someone that he has to learn from instead of instructing someone else. And I think that is very problematic
He really
for him,
struggles
because
for it.
yeah, and also to see him, he's like a schoolboy, because he's
Yeah.
discovering all these new powers that he, we talk about not having opportunities
Yes.
to be your fullest self. All these opportunities that he missed out on because he was a bastard, or
Yeah.
and he was, they thought he didn't have the skill, or maybe they damped it down in him, but now
Yeah.
he's discovering all these things, and he's like a little child. And
Yeah. He just wants to throw himself at it and go,
yeah,
oh.
I absolutely loved seeing that side of him, because
Yeah.
not that he wasn't a great character before, but I think it made him an even better character now. And to see his struggles with having to pay attention to Fitz as his master now,
Yeah.
that's just obviously difficult,
Yes.
because he's an old man and Fitz is I mean, Fitz is older, but he's still a young man compared
Yeah,
to Shade.
yeah.
So I think it's just uh, it's funny and it's beautiful and it's frustrating all at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And this is born out of one of my favorite things about the series, in that because we get to see Fitz grow and evolve, and we get so much time with Fitz, and we
Yeah,
haven't killed off his mentors. I mean, that's one of the tropes in fantasy, that the hero can't become the hero until the mentor isn't in the picture anymore.
right.
So to see him with his mentor and have to engage with his mentor as an adult and now address the flaws he never saw as a child, and to see the things in his mentor that only adult eyes can show you, gives Shade so much more depth,
It
because
does.
we see his blind spots. We see the things that he resists hearing.
Yeah.
And, oh, just, I mean, a number of readers lose a lot of love for Shade in Tawny Man, because we see that he can be selfish and he can be petty, and he does deliberately play with what people know because he can.
Yeah.
There's that element of childish playfulness with knowledge
Hmm.
that comes because he's so selfish and so entitled, and because he can. And yet, for me, that gives Shade so much depth, as you say.
It
You
does.
get to see a more full person, instead of just the mentor that has the knowledge that teaches our hero.
Yeah.
And I personally love that. I love that Webb says to him, look at him as an animal. And that's when Fitz realizes Shade is actually old.
Yeah.
And this is hard for him. And, oh, I should maybe be making a couple of allowances for that, because Shade hides it so well.
Yeah.
He's so busy hiding the fact that he's old, that, okay, maybe he does need a couple of extra blankets. Maybe he would like an arm as he's climbing up a hill, because
Right.
he's in roughly his 70s at this point.
Yes.
And this
Yeah.
is a
I found that.
hard and brutal journey for a young person.
Yeah.
So the fact that Shade has gone with them and is keeping up with them is taking it out of him.
Yes.
But then when he gets there, you see that glee, because he's like, oh, I can use my explosives.
Yes. I know.
And he
I
gets all
love that.
giddy
That
like
was
a
great.
child. I'm like, oh, it's so wonderful to see,
Yeah.
because
That
there
was
is
really
that
funny.
childlike thing in Shade of discovery. And he's like, I can try the thing. It's very exciting. I did love
Yeah.
that. And we get, while we're on the islands, we get Webb trying to teach Swift
Yeah.
that these aren't just animals you can pick and choose from. These animals have lives that you have to respect. If you
Yeah.
partner with this particular beastie that you've suddenly become enamored with, what are you taking from him?
Hmm.
And I thought that was wonderful, because that was learning Fitz never got.
Yes.
He never knew to think of things like that when he
Yeah.
met
Right.
Night Eye.
And there is a sense in which he took Night Eyes away from a lot of experiences that he could have
Yeah,
had he not been willing to stay and be with Fitz. And
that's right. And we
uh,
saw it in Assassin's Quest, because
yeah,
Night Eyes went off to be with the wolves, and he didn't only come back because he missed Fitz. He came back because he was called by Verity and he
yeah,
couldn't fight it.
yeah,
How much of that did Night Eyes hide from Fitz? How
yeah,
was there resentment there? We don't know,
yeah,
but there could well have been. Now that we have this insight from Webb, that no, you're actually taking something from the animal when you take it
yeah,
into your life. Again, that hindsight gives us more context for what was happening previously. We
yeah,
now have to question, because we know how clever Night Eyes was. How much did he resent that?
yeah,
Did he spend time protecting Fitz from that knowledge? Because I think he did,
yeah,
personally, because
yeah.
he was pretty onto it, Night Eyes.
And I don't know if this is has been everyone's experience, but like as a pet, well,
Mm.
as a pet of
A
a pet.
staff member.
Yes, a
As your
staff
cat
member of
staff.
a pet. As a staff member of a pet,
Yeah.
that gives me a deeper respect for my own pet as
Yeah.
well, because there is a sense, for the longest time, like, and a lot of people still today say that, they're just animals. They don't have personalities. They don't have like
Nobody who's
emotional
had pets
connections and
says
stuff. Oh,
that.
they do. And
They
there's
really do.
definitely a sense in which our connection with our real life animals
Yeah,
warrants a bit of respect.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
how many people don't even wonder what their animals do when they're not there, because their
yeah,
pets really only exist when they're there.
yeah,
How do you know? Who's to say that your cat isn't like the absolute bully of the neighborhood? Maybe
right.
your cat's the asshole that all the other cat hates.
Yeah,
Are they the victim?
yeah.
Are they the kid with all of the crap names? We
Mhm.
don't know. But cats have their own social networks. Science has shown us this. They've studied so many cats. They
Yeah,
have social hierarchies. They have these connected circles of groups. So when a cat, because let's face it, a cat does choose. When a cat chooses to live with you,
yeah,
they're choosing to do that.
yeah,
Whereas with dogs, you're taking them from something.
yeah. Right.
What are you? What potential connections have you removed from your dog's life?
Yeah,
Almost all pets are removed from their parents.
yeah.
How many of these animals are carrying trauma because they were abandoned, or are
Mm,
carrying trauma because they had a really firm connection with a sibling? We don't know. And
yeah,
we're not making allowances for it either. Is your cat grumpy because she's just grumpy, or is she grumpy because she has issues?
yeah. Right.
We don't know, but we can show a bit of empathy
Yeah, yeah.
because they're people too.
Mm. Yep, they are. Yeah,
They're people too. So that's the sense that we get with Tintaglia when she speaks about Rain as like a pet.
yeah.
She
Right,
doesn't think about Rain until she needs him for something, and then she's
right.
like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. I wonder where that one is." You know,
Yeah.
she's had no thought for him whatsoever until she
Yeah.
needs him for something.
Yes.
Whereas he's worshipped this thing. His pretty much years of his life
Yeah.
has been the central thing in his life, and she has genuinely no thought for him until she needs him.
Yeah.
I love that sense of perspective,
Yeah, I do too.
that how our own importance is entirely our own. We think we're the be all and end all, and yet we're just bit players in other people's stories.
Indeed.
And this story helps put that in perspective,
Yeah.
because nobody in Life Ships has even heard of Fitz. Paragon's never even heard of Fitz, and he's wearing his face.
Yeah.
So how much impact could you say Fitz is having? They don't know he exists. As far as they're aware, he hasn't impacted them. But he has, because Fitz's existence stopped a war that led to piracy in Bingtown and led to the whole chaos of the Pirate Isles, which
Yeah.
led to the economic instability of Bingtown, which led to slavery coming to Bingtown. So their entire culture has been affected by
Yes.
Fitz. They don't know who he is. Fitz has no idea he's caused this much kerfuffle somewhere else in the world. No idea at all. So while we're put in our place and while we're put in perspective that, do you know what, you're really not all that important, we're also being told you are that important.
Right.
Everything you do affects everybody else. So it's that whole try and act like everything you do is important.
Right. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
because
that's,
you never know who you're going to be impacting, or what events you're going to be impacting, however small or large your part is in the
mhm.
events that happen. Yeah, we don't know the ripple effect.
Yeah, we really don't. And we may never know,
Yeah.
who we're impacting or affecting.
Mm.
And that's one of those profound things you can take when you read Hob, because she shows you, Fitz has no bloody clue about a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, we love him. Let's be fair. Let's be honest. We love him dearly.
We do, but
he's a bit oblivious.
Yeah. He is.
But
yeah.
he has this massive ripple effect in the world, which is why Phil works so hard to keep him alive. But this ripple effect that he has no concept of affects continent-wide swathes of the world. And all unknowing. If he knew, would that have changed what he did? Possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
And so there's that dichotomy of, or do you tell him that it's going to affect this much? Do you say, if you don't do this, nothing, it's going to affect this lot badly? I mean, how? All you can do is be yourself.
Yeah.
Is that the key? Is that why they had to keep Fitz alive? Maybe he could have used someone else. We saw in Life Ships, Amber was looking for Wintro, the nine-fingered slave boy, never quite managed to get in touch properly with Wintro. So instead, latched herself to Althea. Was that a better choice in the end? Because that led her to being on Paragon.
Yeah.
And being on Paragon led her to unearthing all of the connections around Egrot the pirate and Kennet, which led to the treasure, which leads to the crown, which has led ultimately to the resurrection of Phul, which again was that in the plan? Was that intentional? Is it better than if she'd instead found Wintro and not had to engage with Paragon? We don't know. But now we've opened this door to possibility.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
And it's like, well, is the most obvious path, the one which is the nine-fingered slave boy, the right path? How many prophets in history have gone with the obvious choice, the easiest one to find, the one with the clearest path, when maybe if they'd looked for one a little bit more tricky, a more beneficial ending could have come out of it, because that's ultimately what I think we've got with her having to work with Althea. So you want to stay content. Yeah, it's Hob, it's Fitz, and that's perhaps an expectation that it will not be fulfilled.
Yeah, right.
I have heard her say in a conversation that she gets really irritated with Fitz because he makes really bad decisions.
Yeah.
And she's like, and I can't not have him make, that's who he is. But he adds hundreds of pages to my books every time he does it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've got to get him out of that.
He's incredibly impulsive. When he first got reconnected with Molly, and he went to her apartments, and all the kids were there, and he just blurts out who he is, and what his
and Molly's like,
are. I'm like,
really?
Your timing is not great, my friend.
I just love Molly.
Way off.
I don't think you should have entrusted that secret to my 4-year-old.
Right?
Like, come on, dude. Yeah, they are incredible books, Scottish Phul. They are. And because Fitz is human, I mean, how many of us at any point in our lives have made wise decisions at every opportunity? We make the best decisions we can with what we know at the time. Yes. And Fitz being Fitz he very rarely has all the information. So he's always making decisions based on faulty information.
Yeah.
So,
and even when he does have the right information, he sometimes still makes really stupid decisions.
Yeah, he does, because he's coming at them from just really from broken points of view, because he hasn't healed himself.
Yes.
So, and we come, that memory being self, that core part of the story that is who you are. That's what forms you. That's what makes you. Mm-hmm. And so that's all very exciting. So I think because we've been going a while now, almost far out. Okay, longer than I thought, nearly 2 hours. Okay, we'll start wrapping up. Over the 9 books that I haven't even asked. Did you read the novella?
The Piebald
Piebald
Prince, I have
Princess?
not yet.
Oh, sorry, the Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. Okay. It's
Right,
not necessary. You can read it whenever.
yeah.
I usually say, if you're going to read it as part of the series, read it before Tawny Man, because it's set in
Okay.
history and sort of puts in context the hatred for Whitted. So it works as a good place before Tawny
Okay,
Man,
that's
because
good
that's
to
a big
know.
conversation in
Yeah.
Tawny Man. But it's a standalone ultimately, because it's set so far in the past. Although Jake Bishop did comment that only Hob could find a way to punish Fitz from hundreds of years in the past.
Right.
Yeah, which isn't untrue. But of the 9 books that you've read, I mean, how are you sitting with it in general as you are looking at the 7 in front of you?
Oh,
How are you sort of sitting?
I am just I'm just completely immersed and thankful that I actually started the journey, because for the longest time I said to myself, I have no interest, and I look back now and I'm like, what were you thinking? Because this has just been amazing. After I read Live Ship Traders, I said that is my favorite series that I've read so far, and probably one of my favorite series of all time. And then I read Tawny Man, and Tawny Man has only slightly, but it has replaced Live Ship for me as my favorite series in
Yeah.
the overall series. But I still love Live Ship, and um, I like uh, the the Farseer trilogy. I do. Royal Assassin is still one of my best books I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I think it's a natural progression, because Tawny Man is as far as I've read, and it's informed so much of what I know about the characters and what I know about the world, and what it teaches me about my world and what it teaches me about myself. And I'm there's no way I could not finish the series and just continue reading whatever she
Yeah.
puts out in it. And I think I'm a better person for having started reading this. I really
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's oddly not an unusual take. It's something that seems to be reasonably universal, that people have gone, I have learnt
Yeah.
in myself to be better.
She has a very keen understanding of human nature,
Yeah.
and and what human beings take from their experiences that not many authors do.
No. Although, to be fair, not many authors put themselves in a position to write a lifetime.
Right, that's very true.
Where a character can, evolve so normally and
Yeah.
so naturally. So possibly other authors could have done as good a job, but they just aren't writing stories that show that.
Right.
But that is one of the things I do love about this series, that we are getting, as the spine of the series, we're getting Fitz.
Yes.
He's the thread that holds this together. And as a human, he's growing and he's learning and he's reflecting. And those are some of my favorite moments in the series, where we get the little epigraphs that are just insights to his thinking in the moment. And you see him thinking about things he's done in the past. And had he known something different, his regrets and the things he wishes he'd done differently. That's a very human thing.
Yes,
To look back on your life and go, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done something different. I love seeing that.
I do
for my main antagonist. I love that so much, that reflection back on the decisions that he made, that we read about at the time and thought was either brilliant or ridiculous or whatever. I just love that so much. So when you're going, I mean, you've been in BookTube for longer than I have, I think. And so you will have I don't know, expectations, beliefs about what you're heading into in Rain Wilds? I mean, what do you think you're going into? What do you hope to get from Rain Wilds?
Yeah, I'm trying to, and you're right. I've seen a lot of
Mm.
things on BookTube, some negative, some positive about Rain Wilds, and I'm going into it expecting that it will be different,
Yep.
but um, I'm going into it willing to appreciate the differences and just kind of
Nice.
roll with it. I
Mm-hmm.
have a very good feeling about Rain Wilds. I really
Nice.
do. Because I love dragons, and I want to read more about the realm of the Elderlings dragons, and see the see the birth of a new generation of dragons and things like that, and how that happens, and the people that are involved in those experiences. So um, I, I'm going into it feeling really, really good, and I know it's going to be different. And I know people say that it's not some of her best writing, but I kind of wonder if that's because it's so different,
Yeah.
not because it's poorly written.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Robin Hobb could write anything poorly at this point,
No.
but it's
No.
probably very different than what we've gotten, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I really
I
am.
think that's the most important thing that you need to
Yeah.
go into it with. It's just knowing it will be different. A lot of people who have bounced off it hard have gone in, and I'll admit I was one of them initially, where I went in wanting more of the same, and I
Mhm.
didn't get more of the same. So I was like, I don't like this. I
Mhm.
want to have more of the same. And no, it took AP at a Critical Dragon to basically sit me down and say, read it for what it is and
Mhm.
let it be its own thing. And
Yes.
immediately the story started to shine. Immediately. When I let it be what it wanted to be, I was like, oh, well, okay, actually, this is kind of amazing.
Yeah. Right.
But I did have to be reminded that I was wanting it to be something it wasn't. And once I let it be what it was, I could see what the strengths in it. And
Right.
it grows, in my opinion, every time I reread it. Um,
And I
it's
think that's part of maybe what initially drives some people away from live ship, even, is because even live ship is drastically different than the
oh
rest
yeah,
of the, than any of the Fitz and the Fool stuff. It's
yeah,
drastically different, but I think that's what gives it character, and that's what makes it that's what makes it a unique window on the world,
yeah.
is the differences and the uniqueness of it. So I'm going in excited for a story about people taking care of dragons, and seeing what that looks like. And I'm going into it knowing that it's not going to be Fitz and the Fool
Yeah,
necessarily, and I think that's okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a palate cleanser in a way. Okay, I've had 3 books, walking with Fitz and the Fool again. Now it's time for something completely different, and I'm okay with
Yes,
that.
exactly. Well, I will definitely be a little more onto it, and we will talk again after you
Oh,
going, or even
good.
perhaps as you're going through the Rain Wilds, because there's a lot to discuss in the Rain Wilds.
There really
So
is, I'm sure.
hopefully we'll talk again soon. And before I sign off fully, I do want to remind people that our lovely friend Chaz is also an author and released his second book in October. So not very long ago, which is really exciting. And it is The Nomad's Crucible. And
Mhm.
judging from the cover that Chaz showed me earlier, it looks highly exciting. So tell me a little bit about your new book.
Yeah, so it's a standalone novel. Um, it's a sci-fantasy novel, but it's heavier on the fantasy than sci-fi elements. Kind of more of a post-apocalyptic, post technological age of sorts, and the nomad is a assassin for hire, and he has strange and unusual magical powers.
Well, that's very
And
on theme, isn't it?
yeah, and
I like
he's
it.
and the title, with the Crucible, is really more of a um the Crucible doesn't refer to a physical object, it refers to his journey, and because he kind of relearns everything about himself throughout the course of the book, and
Ah,
it shapes him, and he's still
so
the
get
same person at the end, but a
purified.
different, a very much more nuanced version of that person. So
Awesome. And
yeah,
where is it? We can get this from Amazon. We can
yeah,
get
you
this
can get
from.
it in print and ebook from Amazon, and eventually I'm going to try and get it into libraries and things like that. But right now it's available through Amazon, and yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, you'll have to let us know how that gets on.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
those of us watching, we shall try and let you know if we get around to getting that into our TBRs, which are already huge. But that's
Oh, I
okay.
know my TBR is endless at this point.
I think we also had the same, but it couldn't be if we didn't have authors like yourself putting more things on the list. So
Well,
thank you
thank
for
you.
that.
I
So with
appreciate
that,
it.
I think we shall sign off because it's been
Okay,
2
sounds
hours.
good. Thanks
So
everybody for tuning in and chatting with us, and appreciate all
Chaz's
of it.
channel
This was
is
fun.
in the description. Do go and join Chaz if you haven't already. And with that, I think we're going to have to love you and leave you because we're done.